Fort Morgan, really hearing about work in the nonprofit community, some of the innovative work in ag, COVID recovery, rent assistance, really communities in eastern Colorado, like communities across Colorado, across the nation, are really figuring out and working together how to get back on their feet and move forward. They've done a very good job, and as I was talking to Farmer earlier, I think it's also increased the attention on the food supply and the critical importance of the food supply and how much Colorado appreciates eastern Colorado, appreciates the food supply chain, of course during a pandemic, but no different every day of our lives. I want to thank Morgan Community College, where we are today, for hosting this important update on coronavirus in Colorado and, of course, the fires we have as well. I also am joined by Betsy Markey. She's the head of economic development for the state, and she used to represent this area in the United States Congress. I had the honor of working with her there, a real champion for eastern Colorado. We're also joined by Rick Garcia, who is the executive director of the Department of Local Affairs, one of the partners in the project in Sterling that we visited, Department of Local Affairs, and Dr. Angie Piccioni, who is the head of higher education, obviously Fort Morgan, part of our community college system. She also ran to represent eastern Colorado and also worked on ag as a state rep from the Fort Collins area for a number of years as well. A little bit of local news that's exciting for residents across our state. Jackson Lake State Park in Morgan County here has just been designated as an International Dark Sky Park by the International Dark Sky Association. That's the 5th park and 8th location in Colorado. Most importantly, the only site east of Highway 25. So next time you're looking at seeing a meteor shower or catching a comet, we were able to see NEO-eyes from our home a few weeks ago. I don't know if any of you were. We would have got a much better view if we had come out to Jackson Lake State Park. But what a great asset, and I know it's of great interest to people from across Colorado to be able to take advantage of that. Coronavirus, 307 new cases. We believe that the R0 value is just about 1, likely a little bit below 1 before. We think it might have ticked to a little bit above 1, but it's hovering around 1. If we can keep that up, there is no threat to the hospital capacity. We're doing fine, but I always emphasize it's simply a function of our behavior, right? We're doing well wearing masks. We're doing well with the social distancing. We're at a level where everybody who contracts the virus or any other medical condition gets the top quality care that we can provide. We are at 1,889 deaths due to COVID in Colorado, about 1,985 people who've died with COVID. And we seem to be on a relatively level plateau. One thing that's happened in the last week, and we hope this is a temporary effect, is the positivity rate has ticked up. I think we're at 3.14, not because of more cases, but because of less testing. So we're a little worried about that if that continues. I think it's understandable that over Labor Day weekend there might be less testing. Some of the sites might have even been closed for a day or two. But we've been around 5, 6, 7, 8,000 tests a day the last few days. We had been more in the 10 to 12,000 range, which enables us to have a lower positivity rate. And then really catch those additional cases to be able to do the tracking and tracing we need to restrict it. So I'm hoping that Coloradans take advantage of the quick, free, easy testing available. Sites across the entire state. You can look at community testing sites at covid19.colorado.gov, or you're welcome to show up anytime, no matter where you live, at the Aurora Sports Park, at Water World in Federal Heights, Pepsi Center, Citadel Mall in Colorado Springs, Pueblo County Fairgrounds, or Mesa County Fairgrounds in Grand Junction. These are large-scale, quick, fast, easy testing sites, in addition to the over 40 community testing sites across the state, including here in eastern Colorado. No matter where you live, there's likely to be one that is accessible to you. So if you're feeling symptoms, cough, fever, cold, flu-like symptoms, please get tested, because identifying that early is a key part of preventing the spread. It's also key as one of our data drivers of lowering the positivity rate, because then we have the confidence that we are identifying most of the cases. If our positivity rate were to continue to increase because of a lack of people getting tested, we would have a reasonable concern that there was a large unseen piece of the virus contagion. We eventually see it because we see it in hospitalizations. But remember, we don't want to wait that long to identify where there's a problem, because hospitalizations for depending on the age group that contracts COVID, 10, 20, 30% of the people that contract it need to be hospitalized. That is a good 16, 18 days after exposure, right? Exposure to symptoms, 6, 7, 8 days. Symptoms to hospitalization, another 8 days, right? So we need better visibility than waiting for hospitalization. So that's why if you're sick, symptoms, or you think you were exposed, somebody coughed on you a week ago, somebody that you knew had it, get tested a week after that exposure, even if you don't have symptoms, to identify that early so you can take the steps to prevent your loved ones' lives from being threatened. We also have raging wildfires across the West. Colorado is not alone. We, of course, are grateful for the cold and wet weather of the last few days. Not a decisive factor, not enough moisture to end the fires, but very, very helpful and very constructive in helping contain them. Grizzly Creek, 32,431 acres, 91% contained. Williams Fork, 12,157 acres, 10% contained. Pine Gulch, the largest fire in our state history, 139,007 acres, is now 91% contained. Cameron Peak Fire, the biggest fire now that we are worried about, and probably the one, if you live on the Front Range, that you have been experiencing smoke and large particulate pollution from. 102,596 acres, only 4% contained. And then finally, the East Fork Fire, 1,682 acres, 85% contained. So that's about where we are with the fires. 7-day moving average back to coronavirus, 254 cases. We've ticked above 3% in positivity. And we've also been focused on increasing testing availability in rural Colorado, particularly the Eastern Plains. Since May 4th, we've done 13,000 tests in the Eastern Plains. We've also surged testing at Department of Corrections facilities in the Eastern Plains. Local health agencies are involved. The Northeast Colorado Health Department is soon opening a community testing site. There'll be news on that soon that'll be built on the basis of access, health equity, and really having more convenient testing for residents of Eastern Colorado. We have a very busy day today. In prior press conferences, we've talked about the COVID Relief Fund, helpcoloradonow.org, where you can make an individual contribution. We've raised over $24 million, and that money has gone right out the door. And I want to thank Mile High United Way for really covering the full administrative costs. So every dollar donated goes right out the door to those in need. We provided roughly $1.6 million to organizations serving Eastern Colorado and Yuma and Washington and Sedgwick and Phillips and Lincoln and Cheyenne and Morgan and Logan and Kit Carson. I visited the Rural Community Resource Center, which is in Yuma and Washington. They talked about the use of their $25,000 grant to help small businesses pay their rent, individuals pay their rent, to really improve their food pantry services. One Morgan County really is a trusted hub for immigrants here in Morgan County, using $25,000 grant to create COVID prevention information in 7 of Morgan County's most widely spoken languages. Here in Morgan County, it's not just about English and Spanish. It's about many other languages that many of the workers in processing and the ag industry speak, and we want to make sure that that information is available in the languages that people speak. Also met with Early Childhood Council for Yuma, Washington, and Kit Carson counties, recipients of a $20,000 grant. We're working with them on improving access to early childhood education across Colorado. And we visited the Annex in Sterling. That's a project that Rick Garcia and DOLA is involved with. It was a municipal building, really adopting a co-working space and an ability for local entrepreneurs in Eastern Colorado to network and get the mentorship and assistance that they need to launch their ideas into reality. As we witness the rise of location-independent employment, Along with that is really location-independent entrepreneurship. You don't have to be in Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs, or Fort Collins to launch an idea into reality. You can be in Grand Junction, you can be in Sterling, you can be in Fort Morgan, because you have access to the entire world. And as long as we can make sure you have the local support and mentorship you need, we want to make sure that entrepreneurs have the opportunity to really strengthen the economy of Eastern Colorado. You know, small businesses like the Annex and so many other small businesses are a key part of our recovery. That certainly includes the ag sector. The ag sector contributes $41 billion to our state's economy. We visited Haley Farms today, a non-irrigated dry farm directly impacted from the drought. It was really saddened to see how there was only a small fraction of what the harvest normally would be. Very difficult years here, especially in dry ag, in non-irrigated areas for farming in Colorado. And it's really important that we make sure that ag have a strong future in Colorado. So some of the things we talked about are how different economic pieces can complement the production side to make the whole ag enterprise worthwhile. We talk about energy, oil and gas, wind, solar. What Haley added is archaeology. She showed us a number of the Native American artifacts that have been identified on her property, but identifying that experience, monetizing that experience with the heritage aspect can be a small but important complementary piece to making ag economics work. And of course, the many other opportunities in ag tech that combine entrepreneurship with the deep knowledge base in the ag sector here in Eastern Colorado. One last thing before I hand it over to Betsy Markey. Next Wednesday is the last day families can apply for the pandemic EBT, electronic benefits transfer. It provides families with funds to buy food. Households that are eligible for free or reduced school meals at school and participate in the National School Lunch Program can get $279 in benefits per child to buy food. Make sure to apply by Wednesday. Currently, more than 200,000 eligible students have to have their families apply for these vital food benefits to continue them. You can go to the Colorado Department of Human Services website to get more info. Colorado Department of Human Services, just type that in. You can see right there on the menu the electronic benefit transfer application. We're doing a big push to make sure that anybody who's eligible doesn't lose out on that important benefit of $279 per child. With that, I'll turn it over to Betsy Markey, who represented this area very well in United States Congress. It was a strong voice for Eastern Colorado. She's our lead on economic development and international trade. And this is also a very trade-dependent area of the state as well, really emphasizing the importance of our international relationships. And I'll turn it over to Betsy Markey.
Great. Thank you very much, Governor, and it's always wonderful to be here in Morgan County. We were here last year, our Economic Development Commission, and I have to say we're always impressed at the level of economic activity happening in Morgan County, but really across the Eastern Plains, from the relocation of Paradigm Fresh, which is an onion repackager and vegetable broker distributor here in Fort Morgan, to the completion of the new processing plant in Brush that was built by Colorado Lamb, and then the new dairy in Sedgwick County, and then there will be some workforce housing to follow that. Then, of course, as the governor mentioned, Sterling's new co-working space. So very exciting activity going on right here. And truly, our community needs are really what shapes our economic development programs at the state level. They're really from the ground up. What does the community most need, and how can the state partner with you to help to make that happen? As a few examples, we have an enterprise zone program which provides tax credits for businesses who are investing in rural parts of the state. Most recently, we gave an incentive to CR Energy Concepts. They are a company that converts waste into baseload energy using municipal solid waste like used tires, and they generate electricity similar to natural gas. Our Opportunity Zone program is very active here on the Eastern Plains. That's a federal program which provides tax incentives in the forms of capital gains relief to investors who invest in distressed urban and rural parts of the state. We are working with Acres Popcorn in Sterling, Obey Moving, who are participating in our Opportunity Zone Accelerator program, and then also working on a workforce housing project that is in an Opportunity Zone here in Fort Morgan. So we're excited about those projects as well. Our Rural Jumpstart programs provides tax relief to entrepreneurs, both the employees and the owners of these new companies to get started. We approved our first Rural Jumpstart grant to DocuPots in Logan County, and we hope we have much more activity here on the Eastern Plains in the coming year. And then, of course, we also have a Colorado microloans program, which provides small loans to startups and entrepreneurial businesses that are underserved by traditional banks. All of this information can be found on our website. It's choosecolorado.com. And then I also want to mention, I know this has been a very difficult spring and summer for all businesses across the state, and we are committed at the State Office of Economic Development to providing as much relief as possible. We have been partnering with the private sector on a number of different programs. One of them I want to mention is called Energize Colorado Gap Fund, and that is, first round closes today, and then we'll have another round open in a couple of weeks. We've gotten lots of applications from businesses across the state. It's called the Gap Fund because it's geared towards people who may not have gotten federal assistance, small, women, minority-owned, and rural businesses across the state with a smaller number, under 25 employees. So we're excited about that program. We've gotten lots of, again, great applications from across the state. It provides up to $15,000 in grant money and also $20,000 in low-interest loans for a total of $30,000 available for small businesses across the state. We also hope to launch in the next 6 to 8 weeks another fund called the Climber Fund. That stands for Colorado Loans to Invest in Main Street Business Economic Recovery. It's a mouthful, but we are focused on making sure our Main Street businesses stay in businesses, and this is geared to a little bit larger companies who have been profitable the last couple of years, but really need that extra support during this very difficult time. So again, we are open for business at the state office to help businesses across the state, and please contact us if we can be of any service to any of the businesses here on the Eastern Plains and throughout all of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. And Rick Garcia at Department of Local Affairs is here. Rick is a partner in the project in Sterling that we visited, and so many other great projects across eastern Colorado that are receiving funding through DOLA, and I'll turn it over to Rick.
Great. Thank you, Governor. And good afternoon, Morgan County. It's great to be in the Eastern Plains again. As Betsy indicated, I was out here with her and her EDC group a few months ago, touring many of the counties and local jurisdictions. As the Governor said, DOLA has had a long, strong relationship with rural communities, particularly in the Eastern Plains. DOLA is established primarily to support technical and financial assistance to local jurisdictions, including municipalities, cities, counties, and special districts. But specifically, what I'd like to talk about in this particular time is some of the work we're doing on the recovery front to help these Eastern Plains communities. As you may recall, the Governor, through executive order, did allocate $275 million of CARES Act dollars appropriated by Congress in March to state, Colorado, and local towns and communities around the state. We were able to appropriate those dollars through a process that we began in collaboration with Colorado Counties Incorporated, the Colorado Municipal League, and the Special Districts Association. Those dollars have been made available, particularly to some of the all counties in the state. But let me mention a few of those counties here in the Eastern Plains that I'd like to highlight. More specifically, Logan County received $1.9 million on a per capita allocation. For example, the Morgan County here has received $2.4 million. Just two examples of dollars that have been made available to support these counties in their medical emergency recovery from the COVID-19 experience. These kinds of expenses can be asked for reimbursement on things like public health, payroll, or business and nonprofit grant program support. More specifically, the city of Sterling already has had $55,000 approved and has already been allocated back to the city. Morgan County has about $20,000 in the process, and the city of Yuma is also working very diligently to get those expense reimbursements in so we can get the dollars out as quickly as possible. Overall, 99.9% of these requests have been approved. Let me make a strong statement that it is our goal at DOLA to approve these requests unless something is clearly not allowed, such as not being tied to the pandemic. So we want to encourage local counties and cities here in the Eastern Plains to get those requests in as quickly as possible and look for new creative ways to build the economy with the use of these coronavirus relief funds. I also want to give thanks to, again, CCI, CML, and the Special Districts Association, who have been working with the DOLA team and our local congressional offices to make sure that we can get the right kind of clarification on the eligible expenses. We want to make sure that you don't hesitate as a local county or our jurisdiction out here on the Eastern Plains to get those requests in. It's our goal to get these dollars out as quickly as possible. Now let me share just a few of the highlights of the Energy Impact Assistance Program. That's the grant program that DOLA probably has more of a reputation around, as the governor indicated. In Logan County, the Annex program, which is part of a co-working space, we provided some economic support to get that space renovated. Currently, the county has a request in to our Rural Economic Development Initiative program for $180,000 to do the second phase. That's the second floor of that building, and the governor toured that this morning with all the iron bars on the jail space are still there. Those are going to be renovated into small co-working spaces. Also in Logan County, we have participated in the county road resurfacing project to the tune of $461,000. Also in Moreno, this local school district, we just recently approved a drainage project for $185,000, which is nearing completion. I also want to call out and congratulate the Yuma Main Street project, which we think was just completed. We were proud to have been able to award almost $2 million to that project, and we believe the Main Street program, which is a statewide program of small downtowns around the state, can be a catalyst for the economic recovery. The city of Yuma also received a Yuma Storm Water Project program allocation of $249,000 recently, and also in Yuma County, the Ickley Road Chip and Seal project was recently awarded for $189,000. In Morgan County, we also participated in the design completion of the Fort Morgan Campus Design Project, which we provided an $800,000 award. Now let me mention a few of the programs on the housing front. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly impacted individuals' ability to continue to make rent payments as well as mortgage payments. We at DOLA, through the Division of Housing, have stood up a couple programs. One is the Emergency Housing Assistance Program, and to date we have $1.86 million have been paid out to 786 households throughout the state. There are communities in the Eastern Plains, specifically Morgan, Logan, and Yuma counties. Households have received some of that funding. Also, the Centennial Mental Health Center is also one of our EHAP agencies for Yuma, Logan, and Morgan counties. We have a statewide program we funded through Brothers Redevelopment, which is a nonprofit organization in the Front Range that will also serve all counties statewide. If you have an interest in any of those emergency assistance dollars to support rental payments, that you can go directly to coloradohousingconnects.org. or call 1-844-6632. And then the final housing program is something that is being stood up to support landlords to make their mortgage payments on behalf of tenants that have not been able to meet their monthly rental obligations. That's called the POP program, the Property Owner Preservation Program. To date, 971 landlords have been approved in the program. We've allocated about $2.9 million, and we have 3.4 in the pipeline. That we have served over 3,000 households throughout the state. Also, the Northeast Colorado Association of Colorado Local Governments also received a $206,000 Community Service Block Grant coronavirus grant. And that is used primarily to help very low-income families or individuals, like seniors with access to food, like Meals on Wheels, or help pay their medical bills or their housing needs. And that is being distributed through that local association of governments to many county organizations throughout the area. So in closing, what I want to ensure is very much the same as my colleague Betsy Markey indicated. DOLA is here to support local communities and jurisdictions. We want to ensure that you're aware that we are doing all we can to help you rebuild your local economies and make the best economic decisions to ensure that Eastern Plains survives and prospers in the future. So DOLA stands by as a strong partner. Thank you, and back to you, Governor.
Thank you, Rick. We're also joined by Dr. Angie Piccioni. We're here at Morgan Community College, part of our higher education system. Dr. Piccioni is the head of the higher education department. Our colleges, our community colleges, really doing an amazing job across the state, making sure that the kids' futures is not sacrificed because of the pandemic. That includes much of the work here at Morgan Community College, and I'll turn it over to Angie.
Thank you, Governor, and I do send regards from Chancellor Joe Garcia, who couldn't be with us, but he is the Chancellor of the entire community college system. A couple of shout outs from Morgan Community College, since they are hosting us today. They are celebrating their 50th year, and so we congratulate them on that. They have also been ranked either 8th out of 800 or 4th in the state of Colorado as the top community college, 800 in the nation and 4th here in Colorado, for things like their affordability, flexibility, student success, and graduation and transfer rates. So they are doing a great job here on the Eastern Plains. In addition, they are a federally recognized Hispanic serving institution, so we congratulate them on that. In addition, they have launched just this spring, during COVID, as a matter of fact, they launched their first bachelor's program, and it's a bachelor's program in nursing. So we are excited to be here and to see all of the great work that they're doing here at Morgan Community College. Last spring, as you know, most of you know that our institutions of higher ed had to make that switch to remote instruction, and they did so pretty quickly, and you did that for the spring semester, but they also prepared for this fall, and I just have to give kudos to our institutions. I've already been to 10. This is my 11th site visit, and they did a great job preparing for the students to come back to campus, and so things like signage, like sanitizing stations, which you can see in the hall here, and also spacing. So there have been some positive cases, but we haven't seen anything like some of the states in the country, and so we are encouraging our students to make really good choices. Choices have consequences, and we want to continue face-to-face instruction, and the only way to do that is to keep COVID down. And the way to do that is, as the governor has said repeatedly, wear your mask. I won't say the D word, but wear your mask, and to maintain social distance and sanitize your hands often. We're also very interested in answering the social determinants of student success, things like Rick was talking about, housing insecurity, food insecurity. They have a great pantry here for students, things like mental health and wellness, and even transportation insecurity. So these are things that the Department of Higher Education is also addressing, that we're looking at with the new initiative of the RISE funds, $33 million. I know the governor has already spoken about that in other conferences, but looking at sustainable innovations for K-20, things like enhancing student learning and closing the equity gap and looking at sustainable innovations around things like efficiencies. And so the Department of Higher Education is eagerly and excited to advance the governor's vision for higher education, and Morgan Community College plays a great role in that. So thanks, Morgan community, for hosting us, and I'll turn it back to the governor.
Well, it's really great to kind of see how our state is bouncing back from COVID. Obviously, the key to forward progress is continuing to wear our masks, avoid large gatherings, be safe, be smart, not only protecting your own life, but allowing Colorado to continue to be open and vibrant, allowing a great recovery, including in our dynamic Eastern Plains, as well as the rest of the state. And we are working with communities across our state to really help make sure we build back even better than before. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Good to see you. Agriculture is always top of mind out here in northeastern Colorado and other rural areas around the state because it is so important, and COVID certainly reminded folks on the Front Range about its importance, specifically meat processing. You're kind of in the breadbasket of meat processing with Colorado lamb, which you mentioned. Harper, Raftopoulos, and Rule families opened that, and it was great because Mountain States Frozen closed. Double J, just on our west side, bought a Texas plant and is essentially filling a capacity gap left by that closure. Can we expect any allocation of CARES funding to the Department of Ag specifically targeted toward those small and mid-sized meat processors?
So we are working with the Department of Ag on what we can do to really improve our capacity on the small and mid-size for processing. I've heard from many ranchers that were caught in that supply gut, unable to sell their produce, delaying the sale, taking a loss. And I think that what we've learned from this is several folds. One is, of course, the importance of food systems, how we're all interlinked, including the consumers, who are, by the way, frustrated that they seem to be paying twice as much for something and the farmer was getting less than ever before. So there was just a lot of consternation about where in the supply chain the value was being lost. And I think a big part of the answer is making sure that we have a robust legal framework around regulatory forbearance and small and mid-size. You know, when I was in Congress, I sponsored a bipartisan bill called the PRIME Act that would have allowed sale of meat processed at non-FDA plants to the general public. Right now, that's very cumbersome. You have to buy a quarter cow or something. Most people don't do that. They buy their meat by the pound. So we are looking at state workarounds using within our borders, using the maximum flexibility we have to really empower small and mid-sized processors, both FDA certified and not, to be able to better serve farmers. Betsy.
Excuse me, Governor, I'd love to add to that. Great question. And in fact, I just had a conversation yesterday with our Ag Commissioner, Kate Greenberg, about this very issue. And how can we partner to really look at the programs that we have available at the state level for increasing production, whether it's, both food and particularly meat processors here. I don't think oftentimes they understand what we have to offer, and then also reaching out to, I know we can capture businesses from other states. Let's look at Chicago. We've got a very business-friendly environment here. You've got much cheaper land, particularly in Morgan County. You're an hour from the world's busiest airport right now, and so I think that this area in particular holds a lot of promise for increased production capability as supply chains shorten as well. So it is something we want to work at the state level, and would love to involve everyone here.
Yeah, and you will see some legislative proposals out of our Department of Ag in that area around processors.
Hi, Governor. This is Joe Vaccarelli with Denver 7. This is regarding high school sports. We understand there was a schedule today between Shasta Commissioner Blanford Green and your office. Do you know if that meeting has occurred yet? And if and can you set the record straight at all as far as what variance was given to Shasta regarding fall sports, in particular football?
Well, look, I think there's a window. The window's still open for the additional fall sports that had been talked about. Football, field hockey for women. I think that if not every district is ready to do those, but I think many are, and I think there's still a window to figure that out. So I talk regularly with Shasta. I talk with Rhonda probably 3-4 times yesterday We are doing everything we can to facilitate this. I think the important thing is that every sport will have a season. I think there's still a window to see if some sports like football and field hockey could still be in a season if there's enough districts that are ready to do that.
Did you have a conversation with Rhonda today regarding the
I haven't talked with her today yet. I last talked with her last night around 8 o'clock.
Mary Ann? Yeah, what do you think about the temptation in some school districts to reopen for in-person learning, given that the state is doing so well at containing the virus, with the understanding that we're doing well because these restrictions are in place to begin with?
So most school districts are open for in-person instruction, including here in eastern Colorado. Some of that in-person instruction is full-time instruction, meaning 4 days a week or 5 days a week. Some of it is hybrid instruction, which means 2 days a week. There are other districts that are just starting to go back, that have been online, like Jefferson County for the first month, and Jefferson County is just starting to go back with their elementary and middle schools this week or next week, and then I think high school's a week later. So I think it's being done in a smart way. I visited schools in Center, in Sheridan, in Cherry Creek, in Colorado Springs, and what we saw was a very serious dedication to keeping teachers and students reasonably safe. We saw good practices around social distancing, people being smart, people being safe, and very importantly, the cohorting of students, because across every aspect of society, there will be times when people contract this virus. But the important thing is that when that occurs, it's as limited as possible and doesn't become a school-wide outbreak with 200 people. Contained at the classroom level, 20, 25 people. That cohort would go online for 14 days, and this has happened in many of the schools that are back. It's happened successfully. Cohorts have been online and now returning without affecting the rest of the school and without jeopardizing the health of the rest of the school. So I think that our superintendents across our state, our school districts, our Department of Education are deeply committed to making sure that students are able to return as soon as possible to safe in-school learning. That's occurring in most districts already, and I think in the remaining districts will be happening over the next few weeks.
Hello, Governor. This is Vinny Del Giudice at Lombard News in Denver. Two questions on COVID first. How is the PPE supply for Colorado's rural hospitals and rural EMS? And on the drought, what are ranchers telling you about the impact of the drought on the herds, the size of the herds the number will be able to raise, and the feed supply heading into 2021? Thank you very much, sir.
What was your first one again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How is the PPE
Oh, yeah,
supply?
yeah. There's no active shortages of PPE. The state has a strong enough supply where we plan to continuing supplying PPE to teachers. We made a 10-week commitment initially. We're going to have a period of time that we're able to commit to renewing that. We don't know that period of time yet, but we're strong enough where we're able to do that. Getting PPE out to first responders, to counties. Rural hospitals are fully engaged doing elective surgeries, very important for their economic sustenance. And we do not have any active shortages of PPE. It is a good thing to talk about, because when you talk about what happens if there are major outbreaks in Colorado, the global supply chain on PPE is still severely restrained. So if like in many of the states that have had the outbreaks, Arizona, Texas, and others, there have been much more severe limitations on elective surgeries that had to be put in part to preserve PPE, in part to preserve hospital beds. If we can successfully continue to contain the virus at current levels, then we don't anticipate PPE shortages. The drought is devastating, and as I've visited, met with farmers and ranchers from the San Luis Valley to eastern Colorado to the metropolitan area, and really across the board, it's having a very negative effect. I think you mentioned specifically cows, sheep, livestock. That's additionally constrained by the processing backlog. So you've had many, many ranchers that had to eat several months of excess ownership and time without being able to monetize it. at great cost to themselves and in many cases a loss. That's also coupled with the effect of the drought on feed, the effect of the drought on both dry ag, which is what I visited today over in Otis, which is just a small fraction of its normal production, as well as irrigated ag. Met with a number of farmers in the San Luis Valley where the water tables have not recovered and they are pumping at 50% capacity. So irrigated, but there it's a question of finding out how do we, with the drier, hotter climate and climate change, how do we adopt what we're growing, moving traditionally potatoes. Sheep are almost out in the San Luis Valley. I met with one sheep farmer, but just a teeny fraction of the amount of sheep that they had even 10 years ago. Potatoes, going to potatoes that have a lower water profile, and then other crops like quinoa, industrial hemp, and others that have a significantly lower water needs.
Hi, Governor. Jesse at the Colorado Sun. 2 questions. One, are you planning on extending your mask wearing mandate that expires this weekend, and if so, for how long? And also, I wanted to see if you're concerned about the rising number of cases in Boulder County, specifically stemming, it looks like, from the University of Colorado.
So I think, and I'll have Dr. Piccioni address the colleges. Of course, we knew going into this that congregate living is a risk factor. We've seen this in a even more devastating way with our senior facilities and nursing homes. And we knew that extraordinary precautions would need to be taken, particularly in dorms and institutions of higher education. But we also expected that there would be some level of transmission. I think that a couple things are important here. One is that the transmission doesn't become so rampant that outbreaks are unable to be contained at the dormitory or hall level. And thus far, they've largely been able to be isolated at the hall or dormitory level. And second, that this doesn't become part of a greater community spread to people who have higher risk profiles, meaning faculty, staff, people who live in town that are older, that are more at risk. And we haven't yet seen that either. So while it's terrible that anybody has to deal with COVID, we watch closely in those 2 areas to make sure it doesn't get out of control, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Piccioni.
Thank you, Governor. And one of the things that we want to encourage students to make good choices, and we have seen some contracting of COVID due to off-campus house parties. And so we know that young people, when they go off to college and they leave their parents' homes, they want to socialize, and we're asking them to be really constrained in how they socialize, and especially these large off-campus parties. We're asking, please, for the sake of your own education, please refrain from doing those. I do believe that on campus we haven't seen a lot of spread in our residence halls because they have done some great things around restricting who, in the cohort model, who you can socialize with. It used to be that you can go in and out of any dorm on your campus, and now you're restricted to your dorm. In some places, you're restricted to just your floor. And so these cohorts are working, and when we do have cases, we're doing a great job of quarantining and making sure that it doesn't expand beyond what we anticipate. So it's the off-campus house parties. Please, let's get rid of those. Thanks.
The masks are working. We all are frustrated with masks. I can't wait until 2 things. The fire ban's over and the mask requirement's over. Because we're going to, I think a lot of folks, including me, are going to be happy to have little bonfires to burn these things and never look back. It's working. It'll likely continue another 30 days. We want to end it as soon as we can. But what it allows is all this progress we're making. I mean, the only reason we're talking about high school football, the only reason we're talking about kids at our colleges and being open where in other states they've closed is because of the success that Coloradans have demonstrated wearing masks. And again, the state requirement's a very limited one. It's just indoors around other people. There are municipalities that have different requirements in their downtown areas and outdoors, and other areas have gone above and beyond what the state is requiring. But as a baseline, this is helping to keep that R0 value, we hope, around 1. It's been a little below 1. If it's very slightly above 1, it's not a concern. If it drifts up more, it is. But the mask wearing is a key part of continuing the forward progress and it'll be with us for the next 30 days.
What's the threshold you'll have to look at to, when you'll not extend that additional 30 days?
Yeah, I would say the priorities are getting the nightlife back, meaning getting right now 11 o'clock, but midnight, 2 a.m. We want to. That's more important to people. It's more important economically. So we want to do that first. That's a priority. And then if we're able to successfully that's really the last thing that's not happening. I mean, other things are opening. I'd love to increase some of the capacity. But if we're able to successfully do that, then ending the mask requirement would be the next step.
Hi, Governor. John Daly with Colorado Public Radio. Thanks for taking our questions. We're roughly at the 6-month point in the pandemic. I wonder if you could reflect a little bit on the major lessons that you feel like you've learned over that past 6 months, and then also how that those things you've learned might guide your strategy and your approach going ahead in the coming 6 months here, or however long this might go. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you might remember in some of the early days, I said this is, a marathon. This is a marathon. This is not something about staying at home for a few weeks. This is about how we live for several months, and it is. And it's about how we can move forward, how we can support ourselves, how we can grow our economy, how we can live enriching lives, but also take the precautions that we need to keep ourselves safe. And not only are the two not mutually exclusive, the two must be done in tandem. We must move forward and be able to live and work and have fulfilling lives. And at the same time, we must do it in a reasonably safe way, or it would prevent us from being able to work and live. In many of the states that have had to go backwards, close restaurants for visitation, and have more restrictive requirements on commerce. So patience, endurance, finding what works for you for a period of months. We are, again, hopeful, like many are, that there'll be vaccine available by the end of the year, or effective treatments. Also, a lot of promising treatments in the works. There's already better treatments than there were when this started, but none of them are game changers. I mean, remdesivir and others can reduce hospitalization, reduce fatalities 20–30%, but none of them are game changers to the extent that we can afford to ignore this virus. But we look at continually new therapies, vaccinations, and then finding a way where we can live, where we can have, school, where we have college, where we have sports, where we're able to work, we're able to go out to restaurants, along with the minor sacrifices we make. Wearing masks indoors. It might mean, not partying at nightclubs at 1 in the morning. It might mean the Broncos are back, but it means that while some people can go and they can do it in a safe way, packing the stadium would lead to a setback that would set the economy back and all of us back. So, we're proud to work with everybody to get that element back, outdoor concerts, all of these great things. But it's about finding that way we live for a period of time. We have the psychological and spiritual fulfillment we need. Our economy can grow. And then we look forward to the day when the fire bans are ended and the mask requirements are ended, and we can party all night long.
Hi, Governor. This is Mark Stallinger with 9 News. I wanted to follow up on my colleague's question about high school sports. CHASA's statement today seems to suggest that your office is considering offering additional funding to districts to facilitate fall sports like football. Can you expand a little bit about what that looks like and what you are considering?
Yeah, we first of all, we don't want to be involved with the individual decision of districts about when to sequence their sports. That's a very localized decision, and superintendents, athletic directors take that very seriously. What I do think is that school districts should have the option of having football and if appropriate, women's field hockey in the A season or the C season. For those that are back, that are ready to go. The majority of districts in our state, frankly, and certainly all the small rural districts in eastern Colorado are almost certainly ready to go in season A. Some of them are, 8, 9-man teams. And then many of the larger districts might be in season A, some might be in season C. If it's a matter of resources, and I understand that everything is a cost, of course we believe that the CHASA activities are an important part of the high school experience for many students. And if there's a way that we can find to help in some small way, we would be happy to do that to make sure that kids have the opportunity to participate. You know, kids are only in high school for 4 years. And for many, if they are varsity athletes, that might be a 1 or 2 year window, you know, and I followed the story of, I think, one high school football player in our state, a senior today, injured their junior year. So this is now or never. This is their 1 year to do it. Now, look, I'm confident they'll have a season this year, and even in the worst case, it's the spring season. But I think it would mean a lot to youth if we can find a way to have the alternative for the many districts that are ready to move forward with a more complete set of activities in the spring season.
Last question, Rachel.
Rachel Gable, Fence Post Magazine. I can't say that nightclubs and field hockey are really on my radar, but I would certainly.
You're the only one in the state whose radar they're not on, because that's what I'm pegged about all the time. But yeah.
I can certainly speak for many of the rural communities
Yeah.
that I'm connected to. They would like to see the immediate return of certainly Friday night lights, but
And football.
football.
Yes.
We need some football. My phone's blowing up. Ask him about football.
I'm still optimistic. I think there's a real window to you know, the next few days will be very informative in that, but I think there's a real potential for that.
Well, it's certainly a lot different in somewhere like Cheyenne Wells or Fort Morgan, Colorado than it is in Cherry Creek, Douglas County. Anyway, that being said, what has your discussion been maybe with Cage or with ranchers about making some of those local foods, specifically meat processed in state inspected facilities, maybe making those local foods more directly available to consumers?
Yeah, I'm strongly supportive of that, and we want to use our maximum legal authority in that area. There's issues with interstate commerce in that area. There's less issues with sales within Colorado, and I think that's a very good way for our administration to collaborate with ranchers to make that a reality. As I said, I sponsored similar legislation nationally, the PRIME Act, which would have been, I think, and my friend Thomas Massey from Kentucky is the lead Republican sponsor of this bill. But you know, I think we saw during the worst days of the pandemic, the closure of some of the meat processing facilities, how important something like the PRIME Act would be nationally for our food security. And we can't replicate that in Colorado because of the interstate commerce laws, but we can create more opportunity to reach Colorado consumers. Thank you all for joining us. It's great to be here in Eastern Colorado. I want to thank all the members of my cabinet who joined us, Angie Piccioni and Rick Garcia and Betsy Markey. And everybody stay safe, wear your masks, don't light fires, and the day will come when we'll be able to party together all night long. Thank you. Betsy, I want you to meet Ali because he works in opportunity zones. He's a friend of mine that works in opportunity zones. So it's our head of economic development.
Yeah, I was actually going to have him take a picture of us here.
Are you working on any specific projects around?